Hi everybody, thanks for watching my video. My name is Coach Pav and today I'm going to be talking about how you can build your base fitness. So I'm going to start with a general understanding of what base fitness is. Now there's going to be loads of different, people, coaches shouting about what they believe base fitness is. And to be honest, there's no one right answer because it's just interpretation at the end of the day. What I will say is, for me, base fitness just means aerobic endurance, building that aerobic endurance for a few reasons, many reasons, which we'll go through in a minute, why you would do that. So base training would typically happen after you've had an end of season break following your previous season. End of season break could be anything from a week to a month, depending on how much load and time and effort you put into the previous season. And then depending on how long you've had off the bike for that end of season, you might do a short preparation period, which could be a week, 2 weeks, a month of just super easy pedaling of riding around, just preparing your body for what's going to come next. Now, of course, aerobic endurance is when you are supplying energy around your body using oxygen with the presence of oxygen. So that actually goes up quite a high scale, which is going to be something I'm going to be talking about in a bit, just for reference. Now, where most people get it wrong is that they think that base training is just about going out and doing easy miles, easy low intensity miles. And to be honest, and I'll discuss this in a minute, but that actually is something that doesn't apply to almost all amateur athletes, just because you haven't got the time. So I'm going to talk about the outside of the box reasons for doing base training, or some of the other factors you could be including in your training later on in this video. But the primary reasons to do in a base period, number one for me is obviously you need to have the endurance. So that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But for me, if you think about your event, most of you might be doing a Gran, Fondo, sportive, even an Audax or an ultra event. If you've only ridden your bike a couple of hours and you think the demands of your event are going to be much longer than that, then in the winter is a great chance, a great opportunity to make sure that you can get there. Typically, you could talk about reverse periodization, where you would do all of your power work in winter and then do your more specific to your event endurance stuff later on. There's not necessarily a bad thing to do. It really does depend on what your strengths and weaknesses are. So I don't think that leaving a weakness such as if you're going to have to, double, triple, even quadruple the time that you've spent on your bike to be able to meet the demands of your event, that's definitely something I would say is a weakness, and you should do it over the winter. Definitely get that going, because you don't want to leave it too late and then have really struggling. It's all very well having a really good FTP, but if you can't sit on the bike for 6 hours, you're not going to be able to do a 6-hour Gran Fondo. So that's principle one. You've also got fat oxidization and transporting oxygen fuel around your body, obviously very important for producing that power, and again, losing weight can be a great benefit of that, depending on how you periodize your nutrition. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit about nutrition in a bit, but periodizing your nutrition around your training is really important. It's something I do a lot with my clients. It can see significant benefits and boosts to that training if you get it right. But also there's a give and take there, because you don't want to go over the top, starve yourself, lose too much weight, lose the wrong type of weight and stuff like that. So it's going to be really crucial you make sure you get that right. So for me, I typically, but not always, again, this is a generic video, it's going to be really hard for me to give personalized advice, but typically when I get a new client or I get questions around what I should do or what I would do with this person's training in this time availability is one of the most important factors around this. The reason why people get this wrong, amateur athletes get this wrong, is because they believe that you should be training like pros do. Lots of 30 hours a week of just riding around base with 80% might be like zone 2 work, and that will work, but probably only if you can afford to spend 15 or more hours a week doing that. And I think I'm struggling to think of any of my athletes that I've worked with in the 10 years I've been a coach that have had that time. The only ones that have are the aspiring pros, neo pros and stuff like that. So modern amateur athletes, it's probably going to be not appropriate, not going to get the best bang for your buck doing that. Having said that, I do know people who will swear by that and will do that, and that's great if it works for you. And I think that is a key takeaway, is that regardless of any of the information you hear from me or other coaches or other sources, you should make it work for you, because that's the biggest point. So back to time availability. If you have 10 hours or less, I would definitely be looking at a threshold based training. So sweet spot's probably really good. One of the benefits I didn't touch on of a good base period is boosting that recovery. It's really good because you're not going to place too much stress necessarily by doing lots of intense work that you do as you start to build towards your events. So you're going to give your body a chance to recover. It's good that you can miss sessions if you're feeling tired, sickness and stuff like that. Base training should definitely look to boost that element of recovery. So it's a good time to experiment with exactly how much training load you do, because you don't want to get it wrong. Do too much during the winter and then you're already on the back foot come specializing towards your events. So 10 hours or less, I would be looking at a sort of sweet spot to threshold kind of training. That's not to say you do all of your training at that, but a lot more of it will be around that area, probably still including some high intensity stuff. It really does depend. I know there's a lot of platforms that don't put any high intensity and just everything sticks around sweet spot. I'm not always a massive fan with that, especially as I said earlier, if you are in that use it or lose it category, which tends to be 50 years or older, but it can be a bit less. You probably understand, you'll probably know that, because you'll be somebody who might have a really epic season, take some time off, and then not worry about doing intervals, and then the intervals feel really killer, like climbing a hill going to be feeling really difficult for you. If you're that person, then there's an argument that you always keep a little bit of intensity all year round, because it's easier for you to maintain that. And it's going to be really hard for you to continue to build that back up. So 10 hours or less a week, probably doing a lot of threshold stuff. Again, the point is that actually spending an hour at zone 2 isn't really going to give you too much. You could do it fasted. There's an argument for that. If you were to do like a polarized training where 80% is zone 2 and 20% is high intensity, if you were doing less than 10 hours a week, you're probably needing to do some sort of glycogen depleted type of training to make it really work, where you would do an evening interval session, maybe eating just protein and a high fat meal, so very little carbs, maybe just leafy greens, and then up in the morning before breakfast and doing an hour, 90 minutes, even 2 hours of fasted training. That's probably the only way that really works. It's great training. It's pretty brutal, especially when you're not used to it. Most of us have probably done fasted training. It's another level to do glycogen depleted, but it can be really good, especially if you're an ultra endurance athlete. You need to be doing like simulating some of your events, and if you're doing something like Race Across America, the jog, where you're riding 10 plus hours a day, for a week or even longer, you're probably not going to be able to mimic that too much in your training. Therefore, even doing something, even if you have 10, 15 hours of doing something that makes it really hard, not all the time, but enough to simulate that and get your body and your mind ready for what's going to happen, so it's not so much of a shock. So here's something that I love talking about, because I never hear any other coach talking about this, and it's so important for me. And if you've seen my video on how to become a complete or holistic cyclist, you'll know how much emphasis I put on outside of the box training, like really thinking about what else you could be doing every session that's going to help you reach your goals. So here, base training is the perfect opportunity, because you've typically got if you've typically got steady state work, not intervals, where you can factor in a lot of different things, especially if you're doing like a long ride at the weekend, 4 hours or something, and it's all base work. Some people, if you're doing indoors, fair play to you, but some people will get that's a little bit boring and they end up just putting Netflix on. That's fine, but actually what you could be doing is any of the following factors that I'm going to list off right now. Okay, first of all, much like being able to have the endurance to ride your bike for the duration of your event, one of the biggest things that most people seem to forget, like amateur athletes, is that actually you need to be able to hold that position too. This is why I'm basically new clients, new athletes that I work with, it's pretty much one of the first questions I ask. When's your bike fit? When was your last bike fit? Is there any issues you got on there? I can do stuff remotely, but I genuinely believe that people should be going to a local bike fitter, because you're going to build that relationship and you're going to want to go back, like at least a year, at least yearly, but potentially, you know, multiple times during the year. It shouldn't be paying the full amount every time. Maybe once a year, pay the full amount they charge. And then, you know, maybe once or twice as you go towards your events, you're starting to adapt to the position, you go back to make sure it's right. You need to be able to hold that position, and there's going to be opportunities here for you to be able to do more with that position. So for example, if you're a tester, someone that does time trials, you need to be able to hold that position, you know, really well. So if you're doing this, you're training indoors, set up a mirror and or even video yourself, just to see how many breaks there are in you holding that position. And you should be able to track that over a period of time, where you get less times where you have to come up or you fidget. And if you don't see that progress, then it's back to the bike fitter, because that position obviously isn't optimal for you. You might be able to knock out a 10, but anything much longer than that, when you're fidgeting or if you come up, you know, the position's not working for you. You need to be able to hold that position. But for our other people who are more, you know, even a Gran Fondo, I'm sure that every one of you has been in a position where you have wanted to, you know, cheat the wind a bit, be a bit more aerodynamic, and that's kind of, you know, getting down lower on the bars potentially. You know, it's whatever you do, your hands position might not actually factor in how low you get, about how your body and your back is. So definitely on your base rides, is make sure that you've got that, because if you haven't, again, it could be back to the bike fitter to just make sure you check that up. Okay, so I talked about nutrition at the start of this, about periodizing your nutrition around your training. So, you know, low intensity training, tend to eat higher fat, lower carb. It's going to help your body boost that fat oxidation and potentially lose weight. And then obviously if you do more training which is at a higher intensity, even aerobic, you're going to be burning more of carbohydrates. So actually eating more carbohydrates might improve recovery, because you're going to be able to replenish that carbs that have lost. I also believe that there's potentially another facet of training that you can bring in here, and that is practicing your event nutrition plan. So if you've seen my video on how to fuel a Gran Fondo or sportive, you'll know that, you know, I place a lot of emphasis around trying to get that 60 to 90, even potentially 120 grams of carbohydrates in per hour. If you've never eaten that much on the bike, the last place that you want to do it is on your event, because most people will end up, you know, vomiting, or, you know, having something even worse, a little bit more south than vomit happen. We don't want that. So you definitely, there's an argument that says you would do this when you're being more specific to your event. But again, if it's something that is a massive weakness, if you've never developed a nutritional plan before, one ride a week, just figuring out what your body likes to eat, especially, you know, around different types of different types of rides, be that, you know, your long low intensity rides, or even sometimes with your threshold training, because you're going to have times where you're pushing up climbs in your events, no doubt, and that can be where actually there can be some GI distress, because your body's used to, you know, flooding your muscles with blood rather than your stomach. And if you've got too much food in your stomach, when that's going to get confused and you get stomach ache. So there's an argument, if you've never done anything with your nutrition plan for your event, winter's not a bad time to start looking at that and thinking about it. Okay, again, there's loads of great bits of software for this to help, but your pacing plan is going to be really important. Now, if you've been a bike rider for many years, you probably figured out, you know, that pacing to feel, or working with a power meter, even a heart rate monitor, to get that right. If not, definitely have a look. Winter is a perfect opportunity to start working out how it is you feel at different intensities, particularly when you get to those long climbs or at the start of a ride. You'll figure out very quickly when you're going too hard, but it takes being mindful of that. So if you're somebody that always says, you know, I feel really knackered, you know, midway through a ride, and I drop off the power, or, you know, my ride just slows right down, you know, that just is a signal that you're probably doing something wrong. It could be nutrition, but it could just be that you're going too hard at the start. So developing your pacing plan, learning to pace, is really important during winter. So I definitely recommend spending some time there, maybe using software like Best Bike Split to develop something more specific to your event. But again, that could wait until you start to actually get towards that build, or, you know, specialization phase of training. So technique is my next point, and This is again something that a lot of riders mess up on. You know, you all do all of the great training, and then on the event you can't descend, or you can't ride in a group like that. Those two are probably the biggest two that you're going to lose the most of time if you're not a comfortable descender. And you don't have to be descending like a pro, but if you're always on the brakes and you've got people flying past you because it's a busy mass participation Gran, Fondo or Sportive, it's just going to get in your head and you're going to end up really going slowly down, and that will just kill all of your time. And if you're going for time and you want to enjoy it, being able to be a bit more confident on the descent is really important. Similarly, going uphill, I've ridden a lot of Sportives and Gran Fondos and I've seen some of the shocking positions. It's definitely something worth trying out and testing, just so that you can become as efficient as possible. And you know, same with group riding. If you're on a flat part of the Sportive, you want to be in a group. Like, you don't want to be hanging off the back. Get in a group, because it's going to lower the amount of effort you're going to have to do for that amount of speed. It's just free gains. And the last two are really more about mentality. And we all know, again, if you've watched my video about, you know, how your mentality affects your cycling, you know how much I place an emphasis on, you know, the enjoyment of training, because when you really enjoy it, that's when you're going to see the big gains, because you're going to engage more, you're going to be happier, less stressed. You're just going to be an all-round better cyclist. So make sure you're enjoying it. Like, base training should definitely be fun, because if you're already hating it, if it's already a chore, if you're already like, oh, can't be bothered, by the time you get to the summer, you're going to hate cycling. You're probably never going to ride again. So do something that is fun. If you know you need that camaraderie, which, you know, is my next point about socializing, you know, and it's not safe outside. Maybe you're in a country that is just snowbound. Maybe you just don't like riding in the rain, that's fine. Zwift, you know, platforms like that have loads of group rides. You can jump on Discord, Zoom, or whatever it is, and just talk with your buddies while you're doing these rides. That's perfect for me. Getting it done, being happy, making sure the training works for you is, you know, number one. And that social element, right? Seriously, during the winter, yes, absolutely. Club rides are fantastic. Go out, get a bit of cake, have some coffee, enjoy, laugh, be happy. Because, you know, that again will really absolutely boost your cycling performance, regardless of what people say about you having to be, you know, on it all the time, you know, training indoors or riding on your own. No, enjoy it, because that's what cycling is about. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I've referenced quite a few of my other videos and blogs and content and stuff throughout this. So if you're on my YouTube channel, in the comments or in the description, sorry, I will post links to everything that is done. If it says coming soon, it's coming soon. I will update that when I drop it. If you're on my website, then you'll be able to look at the blog that is below this, and there'll be links to everything within there. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I love making these. I love hearing from people. Make sure you do share it with your friends, leave me a comment or reach out to me. I love chatting training, so if you've got a question, a query or anything like that, 15-minute consultation is totally free, regardless of whether you want to work with me going forward. And so thank you. Make sure you subscribe and give me a thumbs up. My name is Coach Pav. Have an awesome day.